Sounds good to me.
All right, cool. Well, why don't you fire away? Fill me in. What's going on? Where are you guys at?
Okay, we're in Texas. We're just outside of Houston.
Okay.
I'm here. I've got you on speakerphone. I'm here with my boss.
Awesome.
We've been looking at it, and they had pointed out your recruiting videos and all of that before, and I've been checking out quite a few of them
Yeah.
on YouTube and trying to dig a little bit deeper into what you actually have to offer.
Right.
So we're finally at a point to where we think that we can actually sit down and do something.
Okay.
But we're looking at starting off to where I can actually start doing the recruiting and training because we want a uniform training.
Right.
Where everybody's on the same page. It's like you've said in your videos, the ride-along training. That's how I was trained, and that didn't go very well.
Right. It's a little rocky.
Well, and it was, and it's a lot of getting out there and just figuring it out on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to do something a little bit different on that so we can bring in a lot more people to be able to accomplish a lot more.
What are your guys' recruiting goals for next year?
I'm saying 10 just to where, it's manageable, but of course, you want to get 15 or 20 going.
Right.
You can't. And I have the crews and I have the ability and the financing to be able to do a lot.
Right.
So I'm just trying to be sensible, though, and saying 10 just to get it going and to keep the recruiting machine coming in because people fall off fast.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And, that's what I learned in Cutco was people are like, oh, it's a sales business. It's like, well, yes, but it's actually a recruiting business. Like, your job is not even mostly to push your guys to sell. It's actually to just get salespeople. And it never ends. Like, that's the other thing that I think some people miss is they think, oh, well, if I just find the right people, then I'm good to go and then I can retire. And it's like, no, you're going to keep recruiting over and over and over again. And some people are going to fall off. Some people are going to stay for a long, long time. Some people are going to sell $1 million. Some people are only going to sell 200. But that's the name of the game is there's going to be a lot of different, individuals in the organization. But at the end of the day, your average salesperson, the average numbers you're going to be putting out is probably $350 per person. Like that's the industry average. And that was actually reflected pretty close in the numbers. You just said, you've had 6 guys and they did 2 million. So that's 333,000 a piece, right?
Right.
So of course, like the more people you hire, you're going to have those guys that do 800, 900, 1.2 million, but you're going to have guys that do 180 and they're going to do 300, and that's just the averages just work themselves out. So when you had those 6 guys, where did those people come from? How did you find them?
Family and friends working.
Basically family and friends.
Okay. And so I talked to, and how long have you guys been in business for?
3 years.
Okay, so 3 years. So I was just going to mention, I talked to a lot of people that, they've got some good people, an uncle or a cousin or their neighbor or, their son's friends even hop on board. They just graduated college or whatever. And the thing is, those people usually end up being good quality people. But the problem is you can't that's not scalable. You only have so many local friends and family that are suitable for this job, right? And so you can certainly get a few people that way. But when we are talking about, well, we want to have 10 sales guys, you have to have a more streamlined, effective recruiting process to not rely on personal recruits, right?
Right.
So that's kind of where we're going to be heading here today. Okay, so let's dive in. So right now, if you guys want 10 guys, the Craigslist thing usually doesn't work too well anymore. I love that you guys got somebody from there, but the problem with Craigslist is it's just so saturated, and it kind of became like the dark corners of the web. Like now a lot of the time you don't get the best quality people from there, and so we usually like to try to stay away from that.
Right.
So here's what most people end up doing. Most people end up putting out an ad on, Indeed or Glassdoor or, Monster or whatever that says now hiring, full and part-time, door-to-door roof salesman, average income $75,000 to $100,000. You can take the winter off, and you guys think it sounds awesome. And everybody else that's looking at the ad doesn't even click on it. Why? Why do you think that is?
There's not enough information.
Well, it's not even that. There's some key words in that ad that make people run for the hills. Do you know what those might be?
Door to door.
Door-to-door, sales, commission, okay, all those things. When people are on the internet looking for jobs, think about it like this. The average person in our country, the average person in the world, are they an employee or an entrepreneur?
Employees.
Exactly. So when they're clicking around online because they're at their desk job right now that they hate and they're just like looking for other jobs, do you think they're even clicking on jobs that say commission only door-to-door salesperson?
No.
They're not, right? And that sometimes leads business owners to go, well, what's the deal? Like it's the millennials. They're just not salesmen anymore. They don't want to work. But that's not true, because if you look around, there are storm restoration businesses. There's Kirby Vacuum. There's Cutco Cutlery. There's, Young Living Essential Oils. There's all these different direct sales companies that do millions of dollars every single year on salespeople, right? So it's not that these people don't exist, but the way that we're trying to recruit them does not work because it sounds like a shitty job that they don't want to do, okay? So if you put out an ad that's like door-to-door sales, you're probably not going to get very many clicks. And the clicks that you do get tend to be the people already in the industry that show up and they say, well, I've already done this and I promise I can sell you $800,000 this year, but the last company I worked for ripped me off. They owe me like $30,000 and I'm just struggling to even pay for gas. So I need gas money, but I can get started. We don't want to be building our company off of that person, okay? So here's the other problem. All right, so you say, so Becca, what am I supposed to do? Pretend it's an employee job or pay people like a W-2 salary? Well, no, that doesn't work either. We're not changing the job. We're not changing the job position. We're not even changing the job responsibilities. All we're doing is changing how we talk about it in the ad. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I always tell people, I make a joke and I say, I would love to tell you that I slaved away at this ad and experimented a bunch of times, but I didn't. I wrote one ad and I was like, this looks pretty good. And we tried it out with my beta group, basically of storm restoration contractors that were in other programs I was doing, and it worked. We were getting anywhere between 20 and 50 applications in the first 7 to 10 days, and I had a handful of people get over 100 applicants in the first 10 days using that ad. So, needless to say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We were just let's stick with that. And so that's what we've been using. That's what's in the recruiting machine. And what it does is, it talks about the position in a way that people understand that oh, this sounds a little bit non-traditional, but it sounds similar enough to a regular job that they're willing to check it out. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
So then the next step, the really important step there is, okay, we've got these people in the door, but that's just part one. Now we have to make sure that the interview sells them on the job, but doesn't oversell them on the job, okay? So here's the next issue that most contractors have. They get people in the door, and then their interview, they think, oh, well, as long as I can get people in and I can show them how much money they can make, everybody and their grandma is going to want to do this job. And so they show commission checks. They're like, look, this is a $17,000 commission check. This was for 14 days for Ben last year. There's my Ford F-250 out there. I bought that with cash in July because I made so much money, right? And then people, you think that you're selling them this dream come true. What are they thinking?
Thinking it's a scam.
Exactly. Yeah, right. They're trying to slip out the back door, right? Or they might act. That's exactly right. Or they might act super interested, but then they never call you again. You're like, cool, start training on Monday, and then they never show up. So it sounds too good to be true. And the problem is contractors don't really know how to get around that because in your guys' perspective, you're telling the truth because you are telling the truth, but they don't know that. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
So once again, you don't have to figure out, the Pandora's box of the interview. I've already done that for you again. I've scripted it out word for word. You guys just follow that. And it does a really good job of like the way that we talk about things like commission or canvassing. The language that we use just makes it sound like, oh, that makes sense, instead of red flag, I don't want to do that, okay? And then the commission structure, that's the other thing. So the income opportunity, that's another place where people drop the ball because they're like, well, you literally can make 6 figures in 6 months, but people don't believe that. So how I have you talk about the income opportunity in the interview, it makes them, they're doing the math in their head on their own while you're just showing them basic numbers. And they're like, you'll see their faces light up during the interview. They're like, wait a minute. So you're telling me if I do like this many, I can make this, I only need this many deals, like, to make that much money. So they're like, oh shit. So they get really excited, but you're not saying you can make 6 figures in half a year. Okay.
Right.
So that makes a huge difference. Okay. The interview process is part of it, because if our interview sucks, we're not going to get people to training. So recruiting is basically a constant step of, we need to get them from step 1 to step 2. Step 2 needs to get them to step 3. Step 3 needs to get them to step 4, and so on. One at a time. So the ad gets them to the interview gets them to training, day 1 of training gets them to come to day 2 of training, day 2 of training gets them to come to day 3 of training, and then we want to launch them, right?
Right.
So, in short, to make a long story long, so the recruiting machine basically gives you everything you need to get people in the door and recruit them. And let's say that you run your ad and 35 people apply, you end up scheduling 28 people for the interview, and let's say 22 people show up, you end up hiring 18 of them, 10 of them show up to training, and you end up keeping and launching 5 of those people. You can do that every few weeks until you've got that core team. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
And then the other thing, you guys aren't going to be doing, don't freak out, you're not going to be doing 30 individual interviews. I show you how to set up group interviews, and sometimes I'm sure people hear that and they're like, group interviews? That sounds weird. I promise it's not awkward at all. I show you how to set it up so it's very fluid, it makes sense, and it saves you guys a lot of time, because half the time people sometimes don't even show up. Like if you've been recruiting, like you'll schedule someone and you're like, man, they sound excited, and they're supposed to meet you at your office at 2, they ghost you. And you're like, was it something I said? And so that happens. And so if you schedule 30 people for an interview, though, and even half those people don't show up, you're still interviewing 15 people and you didn't waste 1 second.
Right.
Okay. So any questions specifically about that part of it?
No, that makes sense to me.
Okay. So it basically comes down to, you have to have a good ad. Your interview has to be perfect. And then we've got a new problem, and it's a positive problem. So let's use the numbers that I just said. You ended up hiring 18 people, 10 of them show up for training. If 10 people showed up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at your office on Wednesday to start training, what in God's name are you guys prepared to do right now?
Right.
Probably not much. It's like, okay.
Yeah, because that's the first thing. I don't have no training anything. Everything that we train is just out in the field, what we know.
Yep. And so we need to get away from that, because first of all, it doesn't really work, period. Like sometimes you get lucky and people stick around, right? And if you've got a lot of personal recruits, there's that extra belief in the equation because they know you. So they're like, Chad's not going to lead me astray. I'm just going to stick in here and learn it. But if you hire brand new people and you're like, all right, hop in the truck, we're going to go knock doors. They're like, what the hell? Like, they're not prepared for that. And not to mention, you might be able to do that with 1 or 2 people, but you can't do that with 5, 6, 10 people.
Right.
Okay? So, the first system, the recruiting machine, gets people all prepared and set up to show up to be trained using the new hires training program. So, that course is basically, that's my turnkey training system where you'll have your newbies out the door. 3 to 5 days taught in a classroom setting at your office. 0 ride-along training required. Okay? So here's how it's set up. You guys have an office space, I'm guessing, right?
Home office.
Okay, perfect. Okay, a home office, like at your house?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so have you thought about potentially getting an office space?
I have.
Okay,
About it.
you might want to consider doing that because, again, think about you just hired several people and then you're like, show up at my house.
Right.
First of all, it's probably going to be too many people for a house office to handle. And then second of all, it doesn't really look legitimate to somebody that doesn't know you, right?
Right.
So I talked to a lot of contractors, by the way, that have the same deal. They're like, well, up until now, it's just been me, my brother-in-law, my wife helps, and then I've got a couple people that are working and they know me. So that's pretty typical. Like there's a lot of people that have a home office. Ideally, what you guys want to have is a space that's maybe 1,000 square feet. You've got one or two little private offices to be able to do estimates and supplements, and your administrator can work and answer phones and do paperwork and stuff like that. And you do want to have a private space to do the one-on-one part of the interview. But then you have a large room where you could do the group interviews, and that's where you'd run training and sales meetings for your team.
Okay.
So I would start probably just kind of looking around for something like that. The other thing, if you guys want to write this down, there's like month-to-month commercial leasing for commercial space by Regus, which I believe is spelled Regus. But you could certainly, it's pretty cheap, and it's just like temporary month-to-month. You can certainly try something like that until you find something more permanent as well.
Okay.
So check that out, okay?
Okay.
Now, what about, because I'm a member of HLSR, and we do a lot of, as for the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo,
Mm-hmm.
we actually have a little marina that we do a lot of our meetings and different events and stuff like that at.
Yeah.
What if we had a venue like that to where we could gather? Because, I mean, it holds plenty of people.
Yeah.
And during the day, there's not a lot of foot traffic there.
You could certainly try something like that temporarily, but what I'm thinking is if your goal is to have 10 guys, like something like you need to have a space that's your own.
Right.
I would say, like, if that's something to start, because right now you guys are just kind of starting picking things up. You're going to be doing dry runs and things like that. Go for it. But I think if you guys are trying to accomplish the recruiting and growth goals that you're talking about, it's going to be important to have your own office space because people are going to be needing to be doing supplements, estimates, sales training, sales meetings, and having a permanent space because people are going to be in and out at different times of the day. There's going to be a lot more going on when you have that many guys going.
Right.
So that would be my recommendation, Jennifer. Okay. So
I'm looking at starting. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had people offices that, again, they were like a 2 or 3 or 4 person operation until they started recruiting. And what they did is they just rented out a banquet hall, like a Holiday Inn, for 5 days. And that's what they did. They ran interviews there. They ran training there. People do that all the time. I just think that if your goal is we want to have 10 solid guys all the time, it's going to be time to have office space for that. Okay. So the new hires training, basically how that works is there's 3 moving parts. You've got the actual training script. So once again, you guys, I'm not leaving any of this up to guessing. You don't need to fill in the blanks. I have written it out. It is a recipe. Just follow it step by step, word for word. So the first section is it's going to give you guys the actual training script. So if you imagine you're a professor and you're teaching a college class and you're delivering the lecture. Those are the lectures that are pre-written out for you to deliver. It's that simple, okay?
Yeah.
Step 2 is while you are executing that and you're doing the lecture and teaching everybody, you've got your group of newbies all at once sitting there, in your office, and they are going to be following along in their own training manual. So each person will need their own book. It's an 88-page full-color spiral-bound book. And I used to actually ship and mail those myself, but I stopped doing that because it got really obnoxious to have to go to the post office every single day. And so what I do instead is I sell a printing license with the package. And that's where you guys can actually bring it to like Staples or Kinko's or whatever. And there's a printing license there, and you can print those yourself. Okay.
Okay.
So that's how that works. But everyone in training will need their own books, so make sure you have enough books to prepare for that. That's what they're going to practice, study, memorize, and role play out of. They're learning their word for word, definitions. Like they're going to be learning the basics of roofing components, siding, gutters, what is and isn't hail and wind damage, the word for word door knocking approach they're going to use, how to handle, the 3 most common objections they're going to get at the door. They're going to have the word for word sales presentation, how to handle objections during the sales process, how to explain the deductible, ACV, RCV, depreciation. They're going to learn how to read insurance paperwork, do's and don'ts on adjuster meetings, time management, when to knock doors. All that stuff is in there for them, okay? And it's in the right order. Here's another thing that people miss. A lot of times contractors will teach these guys the wrong things. They get people on and they go, okay, let me teach you how to read insurance paperwork, how to put together an estimate, how to measure a roof, what goes on the roof, and then we're going to go out and start door knocking. And then guess what? You spend a week trying to teach these guys shit that they don't even get to do. If they go out and they knock doors, shit their pants, and then say, I don't want to do this, you just wasted 7 days teaching them technical information. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we don't want to put the cart before the horse because that wastes your time. So the training is in a very specific order. Again, it's all scripted out for you. Just follow it. But it's in that order so that you guys don't waste any time. Everybody's learning things in the right order so that they can connect the dots, get confident, if they make sense of it all, and they can apply it in a way that's very effective. Okay? So then the last final piece of the puzzle of the new hires is the trainer's guide. So this is for you guys as the trainers. This is probably one of the most important parts because yes, you could certainly take my script, teach it, and it would work for you. But I'm a really big believer in helping you guys understand why we're doing everything that we're doing. Why is the training this way? Why does it work? Why don't we want to teach this? Why don't we want to use this word? Why do we want to do it in this order? The reason is most people, if they're business owners, like you guys are probably pretty good at selling roofs at this point yourselves personally, right?
Yes, ma'am.
It's easy for you. Like, Chad, you've been doing this for a few years now, and you probably, when you close, you're just having a conversation. You don't even think about it, right?
That's it.
Okay. And that's what happens when you get to a point where it's second nature. You don't have to think about it. And because of that, because you're at a place where you're so skilled and comfortable closing, you're going to have a hell of a hard time teaching brand new people what you do because you're so far beyond the basic fundamentals that you don't even know what the basic fundamentals are anymore. You just know the Chad system. Okay?
And the Chad system doesn't work for everybody.
Exactly. In fact, I would bet that the Chad system usually only works for Chad. Okay? It's funny how that works out, but that's the problem. And business owners, they come to me banging their head against the wall, and like they'll say, Becca, I don't get it. I'm teaching these guys exactly what I do. I shoot, I score. I shoot, I score. I'm telling them exactly how I say it. And I'm like, I know, but they're not you.
Exactly.
And the example that I like to use is think about like this. Jennifer, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
42.
42. Perfect. So you've been reading English for almost 40 years, right?
Oh.
You don't have to think about it. You just look, you read, you're not stressing, sweating. You don't have to think about it. You just do it. Great. So you've been doing it for 40 years. You're pretty good at reading. Here's a class of 10 Japanese kids who have never spoken or read English in their lives. Can you teach them in 3 to 5 days to speak English, please?
No, hell no.
But why not? You're so good at it. You're doing it right now. You've been doing it for 40 years. What's the problem?
Yeah, I don't speak Japanese.
It's the problem is just because you can do it doesn't mean you can teach it effectively. Okay? And that's the big piece of the puzzle that a lot of these guys are missing is they're like, well, I just don't get it. I'm teaching them what I do. That's not the point. It's not teaching them what works for you. It's teaching them what works. And we have to start with the ABCs. And so that's what this training is going to do for you. And the trainer's guide helps you to understand that on a really deep level. And it's going to just help you to be a more effective trainer. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm hoping it's going to help me be a more effective seller.
It will. I get people all the time that'll email me or they'll leave comments and stuff like that. And they'll say, man, I knew all this stuff, but I can't believe I've forgotten like these simple little things. Like that changes everything. Like I haven't been doing that. You know, it's been so long, I forgot the basic fundamentals. So it's a really important part is to get back to basics. What do they always say? When you start to fly high and then all of a sudden you get into a funk, what do? Get back to the basics. That's exactly right. You just get back to the basics, and that's kind of how you start over. So in a nutshell, those are the two like main pieces of the puzzle here for finding people and then developing them. Okay? So then, of course, there's going to be more moving parts here. We want to keep them. We want to retain those salespeople because it's not just hire, train, let them loose. It's hire, train, practice, motivate, hold accountable. Practice, motivate, hold accountable. Right? We need to keep them up to speed, keep them going, keep them inspired. And so, you know, there's a different program as well, the sales team management program, and that's going to be for, you know, giving you how to have specific one-on-one conversations with these guys to actually hold them accountable without being a slave driver or being falling prey to the buddy system, which is, well, everyone likes the sales manager, but they don't listen to them. Okay, great. It gives you more tools instead of just saying, okay, guys, knock more doors. Get out there, knock more doors. Like, that doesn't really work. Like, we want to be continuing to train these guys. We want to have effective sales meetings that actually light a fire under their ass and keep them hungry. We want to have, you know, we show them how to break down their specific income goal or sales goal all the way down to the exact number of doors that they need to knock each week to make them hit that goal. So instead of you guys just saying, come on guys, try to sell more, it's like, here's exactly how many doors you have to knock to hit 750,000 this year. And then it's like, hey, Tom, did you hit your 57 doors this week? Yes? Awesome. You're on pace, dude. Keep it up. You didn't? Okay, cool. So you've hit 42 doors. Where can you make up those other 15 doors? Thursday? Cool. Can I call you on Thursday evening and see how that went? So do you see how now you're like actually involved in what they're doing? You're not just saying, come on, guys, go get them. Right? So, and it's also got really sophisticated compensation structures in there, like how to pay these guys that actually dangles a carrot and keeps them hungry and keeps them going and keeps them motivated to sell consistently every single month, how to keep their momentum so they don't get fat and happy in September or October and then you don't hear from them again until March. Okay? All that stuff's really important and it gets really overlooked. And so there's different pieces and stuff like that. That was kind of just some little bits and pieces of the sales team management program. But anywho, recruiting, training, we've covered quite a bit of it here. You're probably tired of hearing my voice at this point, but thoughts
now,
on...
Is there a second part of the training as well, the advanced training?
So that's a different program entirely. So then we'd get into the advanced sales and supplement training program, right? So the new hires training is like basic training. Everybody has to go through that, but they're not going to go through that over and over and over again. They're going to pretty much go through that one time, right? Then there is another course called the Accelerator, and that's kind of like a succinct version of the new hires that's online. So after they go out, they can come back and they have an online resource to go back to refresh their memory. What does that door knock pitch sound like again? They can listen to me do it. Oh man, I really need a refresher on the sales pitch. They can log in and listen to it. So that's going to be like a follow-up Roof Sales 101 online resource. That's called the Accelerator. But then the Advanced Sales and Supplement Training program is like, that's like my number one program. Everybody that is in RSM has that. That's like my huge library of gold nugget content. Like it's divided into 4 sections. You've got lead generation. Okay, that's going to have door knocking, referrals, handling objections at the door, dozens of word-for-word pitches and scripts, how to develop leads without knocking doors, like, you know, getting property managers, landlords, business owners, stuff like that. And then you've got closing, so that's going to have, you know, the sales pitch script, the sales pitch video, how to handle objections during the close, dealing with a deductible leading request, how to handle Mr. Bid Collector, how to close people who already have their insurance paperwork in hand and think they don't want to show you their cards. All that stuff is in there. And then the last 2 sections are all supplements and then adjuster negotiations. Master list of supplemental items, what to say, the email script you're going to use, letters for overhead and profit, different documentation, all that stuff is in there. So honestly, Jennifer, so that course, when you use it with your sales guys, ideally probably what they're going to do, you could certainly get extra logins and like they can log in and access that content. But ideally, once or twice a week when you guys have a sales meeting, you're going to, let's say you have a big projector screen at your office. Everybody is going to, you could pick a lesson. Let's say you pick a lesson on referrals and you're like, all right, guys, this is what we're studying today at the sales meeting, where you can print out the lesson. They can study it, practice it, and then you can make a contest. Hey, guys, we're going to have a referral contest. Whoever gets the most referrals by the next sales meeting gets a $100 gas card, right?
Yeah.
So that's a great way.
I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, it's a great method because then every week we're practicing, right?
Right.
Think about a sports team. You don't like have the tryouts with your basketball team and then be like, sweet, you guys made it. See you at the championship game at the end of the year. We'll see how you did. No, every week we're practicing and we're doing drills and we're doing the same thing over and over and over to make sure you're really good at it and it's second nature and we're keeping you inspired, we're keeping you excited, we're solving problems. That's what a sales meeting needs to be. And if you're not doing that every week, you're going to lose a lot of good guys and get a lot less production out of your team than you would if you were being more hands-on with them.
Yeah.
It's important.
That's been my problem because we were so busy and that I'm doing everything in the office and trying to help out the field.
Mm-hmm.
It got overwhelming.
Yep. And Chad,
we're trying to
restructure.
Yes, restructure.
Yep. And you might need some help. You might say, okay, well, we're going to hire somebody to handle all the estimates and supplements so we don't have to worry about that. That person's going to do that. And then we have a sales manager, and he runs the interviews, the training, and the sales meetings. And then you've got somebody who's the production manager. And you've got somebody who's the administrator. You know what I mean? So you guys, as you grow, will delegate very specific roles with very specific responsibilities. And that's going to help you to make everything like a fluid machine.
Right.
Yeah,
that's definitely neat. I mean, we have the ability and we've done great, but, I know we need to improve a lot. Everything.
Mm-hmm. And think about it like this. You guys have done this well without systems so far. So once you implement systems and make everything streamlined, you can explode.
Right.
That's what I keep telling him.
Yeah.
There's no holding it back once we figure out how to streamline it.
That's right, because then it's duplicatable, right? If you have a system that works, you can scale it from 1 to 100. It doesn't matter how big you want to do it. You just do that thing over and over until you hit that number. We talk about the cake recipe thing all the time, but it's like, if I have a recipe, I can repeat that recipe 100 times, get 100 cakes. But if I don't have a recipe and I'm just like experimenting and kind of doing my best, it's going to take me a long time to get 100 identical successful cakes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, anywho, those are kind of the main points here with those programs. And, there's different programs as well, the Xactimate Mastery and stuff like that. Jennifer, according to your email, it kind of sounded like you guys were looking at the all-inclusive business owners package anyway.
Yeah.
Which would probably be the most economical at this point, so.
Well, I mean, the all-inclusive, because, we want to be able to structure everything.
Yeah.
And I definitely need to, because on Xactimate, I went whenever we were slam busy and went and just learned the court, just to learn how to punch in Xactimate and do all that. And
yeah.
So there's a lot I still have to learn about it, I do okay on supplements and arguing with the insurance companies, but of course, there's always more to learn. Get better at it.
Absolutely. Think about it like this. If you guys have, let's say for $2 million, you did 200 jobs, and you learn one. This is what I like to do with people, because it's like, this is how huge the scale really can be. Let's say you did 200 jobs last year, and you only learned, for some reason, just one tiny thing. that added $300 to each of those claims, that's another $60,000 in profit at your company. That's a production manager's salary. That's a very irresponsible trip to Las Vegas. Right? That is a beautiful, brand new Jeep Wagoneer for me for Christmas. Okay? So think about it in that perspective. And the fact of the matter is most people end up adding at least an average of $2,500 additional. No matter where you're at supplementing now, you could probably bank on $2,500 bucks. Take that times 200 jobs, that's $500,000 in profit you're leaving behind right now. Like, those are real numbers, you know. So the supplement stuff is a huge opportunity, and especially when you're talking about having 10 guys, you guys are probably going to be doing, you know, $5 million. So to have that many jobs coming in and to be even missing those little $300 opportunities is a big loss.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. So, anyways, that's kind of the main meat and potatoes here. What questions do you guys have about that stuff? Are you ready to get to brass tacks? So you let me know here.
Well, on the all-inclusive package, how much is that one?
Are you sitting down?
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe lie down. Jennifer, grab a pillow. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so the all-inclusive has all 6 programs plus the ebook and the Facebook group, okay? And it includes 2 users, so you've got 2 user logins. Each of my programs by themselves, each of them, is normally about $2,500 give or take. So that makes this program like $14,000 something. But if you do it all at once, you save like $4,000. So it's $99.99, which is a fancy way of saying $10,000. Or if you want, you can use the payment plan, and you can split it up over 3 monthly payments of $3,500. And then after that, it's just $17 a month, and that's your ongoing subscription to the content. So it's not like every year you have to renew it or anything like that. You just keep your subscription going, and that gives you the content for as long as you're, you know, doing business and want to have access to it.
And that also gives us anything that you update, right?
Any updates to existing programs. So if I add a 7th program, that would not be included, but I'm constantly adding material to the existing programs, and that includes all of that stuff. And the Facebook forum. Yep, so you'll have all of that.
And then you said it includes 2 users. If we grow and expand, what's the cost for adding additional users? Or
yeah.
Is there?
So additional users are a one-time add-on fee of $250. So that gives them full access to the program, or you can give them different permission levels. Like if you hire a supplementer, they could just have access to the supplement course and the Exactimate courses, for example. So usually it's like your key staff are going to have logins. So typically it's like the owner and the sales manager, or the GM and the sales manager, or something like that. But you can certainly add more. It's just a one-time add-on fee for those.
Okay. Okay. And then when we're ready to purchase this, we just do it online? Or?
You can, or I would gladly sign you up here while I've got you.
Okay. Well, let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah, and this is honestly a really good time to do it, you guys, because of the time of year. Because when spring hits, it's like you're not going to have time to sit down, watch videos, read material, and take your merry time, you know. So this is a good time to be able to kind of start and take some dry runs through the winter and just have time. And then ideally, you know, the storm hits in March or April, and you guys are ready to just deploy the troops, you know.
Right.
So that's what we like to kind of have the position in. So let's do it. Let's get you guys rocking and rolling.
Okay.
So
I'll do the 3 monthly payments.
Yep, no problem. Let's get you set up here.